Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, our call-in show on Sunday night. We've made it about 4 consecutive weeks. Here we are a little bit earlier than usual. So thank you so much for your patience with that, because it's my goal to be on here each and every Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time. 10 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday nights. That was the first 3 or 4 editions, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Sundays for the big call-in show. But tonight, based on some other scheduling situations personally, we are going with 6 o'clock Eastern time. So I hope you got the notification for that. Everybody, if you could let me know in the comment section if you did receive the notification, because it's all over the place in regards to people receiving notifications, apparently. What I do is that I send out the notification a manual way on the community page to let everyone know here are the live streams upcoming for the next few days. But then I also set it up here on StreamYard, which funnels through YouTube and should be sending out a notification because I schedule a time, 6 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday, typically 10. And then for the other live streams, for example, Florida State, this past Tuesday night at 5 o'clock Eastern time. So you should receive those notifications. Please subscribe to the channel. You get the notifications when you turn on the bell. I will get to all the comments at the comment section, and I appreciate everybody hanging with us here as we are about 15 minutes tardy tonight. I had to move a few things around, both in regards to scheduling and also logistically to make it here. So thank you so much for that. Special, I will not use the term shout out, because if you watch our Florida State show, you heard me let Jason Parker know this past week that I've never used the term shout out. Not that I can recall. If you can find it on tape, please submit it, and I will refrain from using that term. Nothing wrong with the term, just a bit cliched and overused. I will recognize the Venmo contributions of Colton Doyle and Brian Ersom. So Brian and Colton, thank you so much for the contributions to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, through Venmo. So if you go to the description section of any of the videos, you will see that you can contribute directly to the voice of college football on Venmo and PayPal. The links are right there. And of course, the super chat's on as well. But there are certain advantages to you and myself by supporting the channel directly through Venmo, and PayPal. All right, let's get to some college football content. I want to remind everyone that this is a call-in show. That means it thrives on your calls. 860-325-3687. Let's get the number up there. 860-325-3687. I've got a number of topics to share or conversation starters, but I certainly want to hear from you and what's on your mind. So over the past several days, we've introduced a series where I am addressing the scheduling issue in college football and also addressing realignment of the 5 conferences. Please check out those videos. There's an introductory video that I released on Thursday explaining my approach to scheduling and the conference realignment. Then we released our SEC video on Friday. We released the new Big Ten on Saturday and the new Pac-12, I believe, today, with, of course, the Big 12 and the ACC upcoming, and then possibly another conference. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So if you have commented to any of those conference realignment videos, hang tight. I'm going to respond to everyone. And the way we're going to do that is right back here next Sunday night, most likely at 10 o'clock Eastern time. I will be back. And our live stream is going to consist of certainly your calls. You can bring up anything regarding college football, of course. But the purpose of the show next Sunday night will be to address all your comments regarding my scheduling format and realignment. And then I also would like to take your calls on conference realignment and scheduling, because a lot of people, understandably so, are a bit confused by a few points that I made, and I get it. And just in general, you guys, as always, have been very supportive, understanding it's not a easy process to undertake to realign the conferences. It's difficult, and I'm sure I missed some things there. But I will certainly address those questions and suggestions and comments next week. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Maybe Thomas 8, baby.
Hey, man, how are you?
Hey, man, I wanted to bring up, you were talking about the Big 12.
Yes.
And the one thing I want to remember you, that Texas ruined the Southwest Conference, then they came to the Big 12, and then you've got Colorado, Missouri, Nebraska, Texas A&M, all bailed out of the Big 12. And I know you were talking about getting Notre Dame into the Big 10, which I think would be the best thing for them instead of being the ACC. But I wanted to remind you of that for Texas ruining everything and let you go with it from there, okay?
So you blame Texas off the top for being the trigger for the rest of all this?
Southwest Conference, Big 12, and their next
You're
discussion is trying to go independent like Notre Dame. So I'll let you go with that.
Arkansas did leave the Southwest Conference before Texas did.
Because Texas was running the Southwest Conference money, just like they did in the Big 12.
Sure.
That's what I keep telling you.
Well, Texas
so that's
is,
just my
that's
just my complaint about Texas.
Well, you've got a long-standing history there with Texas, so I understand that there's some bad blood there between you and Texas and your beloved Huskers in Texas.
Well, I think the Big Ten, the best thing for them to do would be to get Oklahoma to come up to the Big Ten, or maybe Missouri from the SEC, because it was between Missouri and Nebraska when the Big Ten got one.
Sure, if you could bring up the...
They said
yep.
they only wanted one, so they took Nebraska over Missouri.
Good move.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and hopefully that you could bring it up in your subject, talking about that Big 12 cluster needs to be dissolved. So now I'm looking at Kansas for basketball, and I don't know, is Kansas State tied in with Kansas via the state? Just like Oklahoma State was tied up, so they couldn't go. If they went to the Pac-10, 12, 13, 14, they'd have to go together. But Texas A&M was able to pull out and go to the SEC. So just things I want to point out to you to bring up on that Big 12 mess, which needs to be folded. So I'll let you go with it, man.
So the Big 12 has already been produced. So whatever I said, I've already said. But we're going to come back here next Sunday night, and I'm going to answer everybody's questions. I'm going to go through all the comments. I'm going to answer all the comments about all the realignment and the scheduling. And then, of course, take your phone calls about realignment and scheduling. We'll get it all sorted out.
Okay, my friend.
All right, Tom. Thank you so much,
for
man.
taking the call, man.
We'll always appreciate it. It's an honor.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Tom. Bye. Navy Thomas. Long time. Long time. Navy Thomas has supported this channel like few others. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We had a couple people calling while Tom was on the line, so please call me back. Again, I was just explaining that we are releasing one video per day on conference scheduling and realignment. It's more bent toward the realignment portion of it. I have addressed in the past how I would approach conference scheduling and non-conference scheduling. And what I believe we will do, this should be a good time, is what we're going to do here is that we're going to basically reschedule 2020. Like if we took my format and applied it to the 2020 season, I should lay out the entire schedule for you, and you could see it play out. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hey, Michael. Give me 1 second here. For some reason, you're not on speaker. There you are. Hey, Michael. How are you?
All right. Not too bad for Sunday. You threw me for a curveball today. I was looking forward to 10 o'clock tonight.
I know it, Michael. We've got a few family scheduling situations to go through. So, yeah, I like the 10 o'clock slot. And I want to be fair to all of you, and I want to be dependable and consistent. So I would like to stay with that 10 o'clock slot as best I can.
Okay, I was thinking about this. I don't have no issues with realignment and stuff like that, but if you was to remove teams from the Big Ten Conference and add teams, would it be Maryland and Rutgers? And if it was those two schools, who would you replace it with? Or would you possibly maybe replace take Penn State out of the Big Ten also?
All right, well, for the good of the conference in football, we're just looking at football.
Okay.
Rutgers and Maryland being in the Big Ten. Hey, Michael, can you turn down the audio in the background? It's creating an echo.
Okay, I got muted. It's probably my. Hang on, you know, 1 minute. I'm on my phone. I got you muted. So let me close the door.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
My wife's fixing dinner. That's probably what you're hearing.
Oh, nice. What's for dinner tonight?
Pizza.
Nice. Very good.
Yep. Is that better?
Some pizza tonight. Very good. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. All right. Here's my thought.
Yeah, right.
The Big Ten suffers on the field from Rutgers and Maryland being in part of the conference. I don't know what the financial ramifications are, benefits or otherwise. And I'm still hearing an echo, but that's fine. So I've not run those numbers. I don't even know if those numbers are available to us to be able to run. But I guarantee that the addition of Rutgers and Maryland has not been to the benefit of the Big Ten as it was expected, because at the time that Rutgers and Maryland were added in 2010, cable television was such an enormous factor in all this, and still is a big factor, but it was almost an overriding factor to anything else. So all the Big Ten cared about was gaining the New York, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore television markets. Well, now digital media is so enormous, and cable is dying, and it's not that necessarily significant in terms of television markets, and those were never college football markets anyway. So Rutgers and Maryland have been more than disappointing on the field, and have not been the financial gain that the Big Ten would have anticipated, again, 10 years ago when it was a different media environment. So I'd get rid of those two, which brings us down to 12. So that would, in the current world, with the Big Ten operating in a vacuum of sorts, that's the way I would do it. But now if you're talking about blowing everything up, I've addressed this in the video that I'm a big proponent from a football standpoint. That's all I care about. I don't care about money. I don't care about anything else except for the way it works in terms of football, tradition, and geography. Notre Dame belongs in the Big Ten. Notre Dame belongs in the Big Ten.
You there, Mark?
Yes.
All right. Because you keep cutting in and out, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's who I'd add and subtract.
Okay.
What do you think?
I would agree with you. With Notre Dame. I'm going to give you 3 other teams and stuff like that. See what you think. Oklahoma, West Virginia, Missouri. Who would you put in for the 14th team?
Well, again, you got to understand and try to determine and start this little exercise out with what's your purpose and who is it going to affect. And if all you care about is we're a member of the Big Ten and all we care about is Big Ten prosperity, screw everyone else, they can figure it out, then that's great. Add Oklahoma. But if you're talking about adding Oklahoma to the Big Ten, then that changes, obviously, the strength of the Big 12. And then if you're looking at the good of college football overall, then it all needs to be addressed then. Then the Big 12 needs to be addressed. But if you're just talking about the good of the Big 10, heck yeah, Oklahoma, sure. Then they become competitive more so with the SEC if they've got Oklahoma on board to balance out the Western Division.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I'm trying to figure out too was, this I'm looking at this as a football standpoint. I'm also looking at it for the other, like the Olympic sports and the basketball, because it seemed like both Notre Dame, even though they've done this year in basketball for the men, women was pretty good, and Oklahoma was having success too. That's what I'm basing it on, and just wanted to get your take about it too. That's
about the Olympic sports?
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that I've never been a fan of is schools that have joined certain conferences in some sports and certain conferences in others. And Notre Dame would be the prime example right now, since we're focused on football. But this has been going on for years and years and years, in which certain teams have belonged to, certainly not all schools have been football playing schools, and they've been prominent in basketball. DePaul, for example. Villanova plays football, but not at a high level. So there have had to be certain considerations given there. But I really don't have much of an opinion on these Olympic sports, because I don't know. I don't follow them. I don't have a concern. So what's the benefit of Oklahoma joining the Big Ten in regards to the other sports?
I figure because like with Nebraska, like with you had friends in Maryland and Rutgers both had decent seasons in men's basketball, and they're also pretty good and stuff like that. I just look at it to where it's more competitive, makes the Big Ten better as an overall conference in all sports in general, not just in football. It makes it look better, especially with the success Oklahoma's had, like in softball and stuff.
Oh, I got
you. That's winning national championships.
Yeah, the Big Ten outside of men's basketball has not been strong in. You know what? I need to back off there, because I cannot speak from a knowledge base. Of course, it's not been a good baseball conference. They just had a team reach the College World Series, in the last couple of years for the first time since like 1984. So it's not been a good baseball conference. And the women's softball does not compare to the SEC or the Big 12 or the Pac-12. But, Michael, in the real world, nobody or few people care about that, nor is that going to move any decisions.
Yeah, true. I'm just looking at it and stuff like that. Last thing before I let you go, when do you think you have to absolutely drop dead deadline is for as far as with college football, as far as it being played or being killed for the year? When do you think that needs to be started by?
Well, I'm taking my indicators from a few college football coaches and also common sense that if you're talking about the season being played on time, on schedule, then I think that the personnel, the coaching staffs and so forth need to be on the facility on campus in mid-July, and then they can prepare for camp starting the first week of August. But if you're just talking about fielding any kind of football season at all, then we've got plenty of time for that. I don't know that anyone wants to start a football season after like the first or second week of October. So if you back that up, then we're looking at personnel and coaching staffs getting on campus in late August, and then they can start practicing at the beginning of September.
Not bad. All right, Mark. Have a great week, and talk. So next Sunday night, 6 o'clock too, right?
Next Sunday night. Hang on the time. I will let you know in the next several days.
All right, we'll do. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks,
Have a great
Michael.
week, man.
Appreciate that. Bye-bye. All right, so we got some folks calling in. I apologize that we've got a rather archaic phone system at this point, but hey, it is what it is. One guy operation. So this is what you get. You just get me talking about college football. It's my college football knowledge and your college football knowledge, and together we make this a great channel. And we will continue to work on the bells and the whistles. Look, see, if this was list time last year, I couldn't put on the screen, call now 860-325-3687. So we're getting better. And again, we're in the midst of a series in which I am realigning the college football conference landscape. I also believe in these videos, which it clearly states on the videos that they were released in 2017. So somebody pointed out to me, I referred to Clemson's record and it was incorrect. It was not incorrect in 2017. So I have the same approach, mindset, and format and philosophy and plan. So I didn't feel like cutting 7 new videos. So here are the videos, and we can talk about the specifics of those next Sunday night. Call-in show, live stream, live chat. We'll do it up big. And of course, you can call about anything regarding college football, but next Sunday night is going to be dedicated to, in addition to whatever you want to talk about on the phone lines, conference realignment. So anybody who's made a comment to any of the videos, I will address all the comments right here and take your calls. All right. It's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. Who is this?
Hey, this is Rick in Carroll City, Florida.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
Doing well, my friend. Doing well. Love that you have you give us the opportunity to go ahead and listen to some sports, even during these chaotic times. It's a nice release and escape from reality. So, again, we appreciate you giving this to us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the comment. It's those kind of comments that keep me going.
Wayne, wanted to touch upon where we're at right now with some of the news that came out this week, including I believe the University of Iowa mentioned they'll be starting up June 1st for all of their summer conditioning for all sports. I didn't understand that was just football, but in particular everything. Did that catch you off guard?
Well, it caught me off guard because I've made the comment several times on here that while there could be some inequity, there's obviously inequities all over the place in terms of money and resources. So the one thing that all the universities, and I'll just speak to football, of course, are playing on the same playing field regarding one aspect of all this throughout history is time. Everybody gets the same amount of time. So I thought that would be the one sticking point in all of this, would be not allowing one particular team, one particular conference to go off on its own by a substantial period of time to get the jump on everybody else. I didn't anticipate that. I thought that there would have to be a uniform decision.
You would want uniformity, Mark, but
Yes.
I think at the same token, it's the governing body and the committee that's in charge of dealing with this situation that we're all dealing with had not come out and taken a stance with any specificity whatsoever. And to have things open-ended that way, you start getting athletic directors, university presidents coming out and making these statements. And I think it just does more harm to the game than anything else. Because if you are, in effect, not even establishing a formal methodology of testing kids as they come back to campus, of testing employees when they come back to campus, once again, you go back to the very basic element of this situation, which is we don't know who has it and who doesn't have it unless you've tested. And it's not just when you've tested. How recently have you tested? How many times have you tested? You could test, you could have 3, 4 false negatives. I mean, there's so much up in the air. And in this world of litigation, I for the life of me, I don't understand why anybody would come come out and say that we're opening on June 1st. That just makes no sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but also I think we need to consider that this issue in the situation is unprecedented. So because the states have so much power in legislating their own guidelines regarding essential workers, non-essential business openings and closings and all that business, and I would think that the same would hold true here. I don't know where that line is drawn in regards to determining the safety of athletes. We saw all this hit during the conference tournaments, and of course it was up to the conferences, because they sanction those tournaments, to determine. They made unilateral decisions on what conferences would be played, to what degree, and when they were shut down. They all individually made their own decisions.
And a big part of making those decisions was also having uniformity, because it was going to impact the same 3 or 4, television providers and the contracts they have with the rights that they have to those exclusive events. And they make those decisions unilaterally as well, because it comes down to financially, I can't have XYZ plan when you're not playing. So they did come together, whether it was in an official capacity, or basically them coming together openly. They made those agreements because it happened so quickly that there had to be some sense of uniformity, some sense of organization for them to get together and make these decisions. So I'm just shocked, to be honest with you, because we still don't know what's going on with this thing.
Well, I know I'm bringing up a situation in this that's a bit unique in talking about the conference tournaments, because they're played. You need the cooperation of all the teams of the conference, but you don't need anything beyond the conference. So it was my experience in kind of going through that to a certain extent from a television standpoint, is that those were made in a silo, meaning that I think that the Big Ten was the first conference to say, we're shutting down our tournament, we're not playing any more games. And even as of the next day, which I believe was a Thursday, the ACC was ready to tip off at 12:30, even though other conferences had made the decision not to. And then even though the ACC shut down before they tipped off at 12:30 on that day, the Big East continued to go on and play.
20 minutes before game time, yeah.
But yeah, this is a different deal. So I know I'm talking about an isolated situation, but I'm just trying to give it some of a review to see, okay, well, what happened there? And they all acted. They all acted in amongst themselves.
Trying to change the direction here, talking about what's going on in college football right now, recruiting-wise. Have you ever seen so many kids commit to, let's say, Ohio State? Recently, the last 2 weeks, Tennessee. I think Florida's had a couple. But have you ever seen these many kids, top-tier kids, commit when they haven't even made visits, like in the last 7-8 weeks? And maybe in some cases more, because there was a dead period. I mean, lots of kids committing, and I'm wondering, are they committing simply based on, hey, I don't want to lose a chance to play here and lose this spot, so let me make an official commit. Even though it's not a binding situation by any means possible, but I'm just surprised you've had so many big tier kids commit in the last couple of weeks, especially during this pandemic.
Well, a lot of things go through my head when you bring that up. So I thought that's where you were headed, that kids are committing without having in-person visits, because obviously they're not happening. So I would think this is where the big programs with the big names have an advantage, because person A may want to run out to see a program, a campus of a lesser status, just to find out, okay, can they sway me? What do they have to offer versus I'm a big-time football player and Ohio State is offered. Not that I don't want to see the campus and meet the staff in person and all that, but it's Ohio State. It's Alabama. I also think that this is, and so those are the schools that are reeling in most of these commitments. when I talk to and review those commitments that are being made a couple tiers down, they aren't receiving as many commitments at this point because, again, I think they're just even more known commodities at that level. I also think that these kids are used to this. Their world's been changed as well, but not as much as those of us who are used to flesh and blood contact and have grown up like that. They're used to living in this virtual world. And so they can jump online and look at the campus and look at the facilities and look at it. And they kind of live like that. They have friends that they've never met face to face. I think they're just more comfortable with that.
It's definitely a different generation. And as you mentioned, that's a norm for these kids. But making a commitment, kids in 22 class to 23 class, we see a lot of commitments, especially here in South Florida. And you're just wondering, how are we having this many this quickly when we haven't done anything? I mean, these kids are making an assumption that they're going to play high school football in the fall. And, here in Miami-Dade County, we've got tons of high-level caliber programs, even in Broward County as well as Boston County line, with some of the premier players in the country. They're down here. And for them to be making these decisions and not have a chance to play, and, Mark, when a kid hasn't played in 6 months, 12 months, 14 months, and you sign that kid, we have no idea where that kid really is at. I'm not saying this is going to last that long, but I can't say it's not going to last this long. So in certain cases, I think kids are forced to take those offers because of the unknown. And in other cases, their level of being comfortable with the program is based, as you said. I mean, they have full access. Via technology, they can look virtually at anything. But specifically, I was really perplexed by how many Tennessee has gotten the last couple of weeks down here in Florida. I think they've gotten 3 kids now in Florida. And they've got a ton of offers down here as well. But like to see some momentum across the board for all the programs, not those just in the SEC and the premier programs like Ohio State and Michigan. Like to see that across the board more so.
And when you bring up Tennessee, Rick, so they would be a bit of a surprise. Not that it's not a great tradition, great resources, facility, conference, but they haven't been successful for the last 10 years or more. So my point, I think you picked it up, was that I would think that the Minnesotas of the world, that they're still a big program, still huge, still have a ton of money and all that, but they're a couple tiers down, that they would benefit from the building of relationships. That's where they could gain the advantage. And I would think that Tennessee would need that as well, but apparently they are doing a heck of a job in this virtual world despite the proof of concept on the field. I can't answer that one. I can't explain it.
I guess we have to commend those programs, starting with their head coaches and their assistants, that are obviously getting the job done. And in some cases, being a South Floridian, well over 50 plus years, I can tell you that the bagmen are out here, even during the pandemic. Certain kids are getting meals delivered to their homes. Certain head coaches from certain high schools are getting things delivered to their homes. And this thing called Instagram and Insta stories, boy, it's very revealing, Mark. It is very revealing, and it's very real. Unfortunately, that's not going to change.
Interesting.
The NCAA week one ahead, I believe, and finally agreed to be able to compensate individual athletes can be compensated for their promotional events or for whatever actions they want to represent a company or an entity, that they're allowed to do so. How do you think that's going to level off the bag game when you look at it across the board? Do you think that's going to maybe even things out?
So is that going to lift up the middle tier to be able to challenge the elite?
Yeah. I mean, for instance, here in South Florida, I mean, there's a ton of money down here. There's tons of corporations, and there are some of these corporations that support, University of Miami. Do you see those opportunities for a kid to promote a car dealership, a bank, an investment corporation, a communications corporation? Do you think those opportunities are going to level the playing field with regards to what we're dealing with, which is the bad game across the board, which is, it's very real?
Well, there's business everywhere. And I just can't imagine that the money for these kids would be so astronomical that it would tip in the favor of a Miami, Los Angeles, Dallas area to where there's just tons of corporate dollars. Because Joe Blow that plays at Mississippi State in Starkville, Mississippi, yeah, there's not that kind of money there, but there are plenty of car dealerships and banks and the like that love Mississippi State football, and it's in the SEC, that I would think that, half the football team could show up at Joe Blow's car dealership on, Thursday afternoon and sign autographs at $10 a pop and make quite a bit of change for the weekend. And those opportunities are everywhere. That's a difficult one to call, but of course those opportunities in Miami, LA, Dallas, San Francisco, really nobody that close. I know Stanford's there, but I don't think that's much of a factor or that connection there, that the metropolitan areas would be at an advantage, or the schools that are close to metropolitan areas.
Yeah, I kind of think that does tip things in the favor of the programs that are in those big cities, because there's more money there. There are more corporations. There's more potential for revenue. So I could go to Mississippi State and get $5,000 a pop for 3 weeks at Joe Blow's car dealership. I could go to South Florida, Coral Gables, and I can make $15,000 each time. It's going to come down to those things, and now it's legal. So
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about breaking the rules. It's legal now. It goes to a third party, and when I'm done, I get my money. But they're opening Pandora's box, is my point here.
Yeah,
And we all know for many years, the Cam Newton situation was the best example of having a different set of rules for the SEC and for everybody else, or some of the big tier blue blood programs that are in the SEC. And there's one in particular that's up in South Carolina, and they come down and they do the rule. And it's unfortunate that that's the reality. Look at the LSU situation. The kid from HMO, Rohan Davey. I mean, that booster with that hospital took care of that kid and his family for 12 years? But then he's going to go to jail for 2 months? But it's happening more so. We don't hear about those things. But let a little program, a little private college down here in South Florida do something like that, and it's, it goes on the cover of Sports 17. That double standard is what inspires me to always bring up the relevancy of what we're dealing with right now. And we are opening up. They have opened up Pandora's box. This time, there's no coming back from it. Mark, be well, my friend. Take care.
Thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate it. So Rick brings up some great points. At the time of the Johnny Manziel situation, so this is back in 2013. So he wins the Heisman Trophy in 2012. There were the issues that he encountered in Florida, I think it was, and sometime during the offseason. And he apparently was paid for autographs and memorabilia or whatever it was at the time. And the NCAA made a horrible, horrible looking decision because they basically determined that he was guilty, but then they didn't have enough evidence. So that they said, he's not guilty. We don't have enough evidence, but he's going to be suspended for the first half of the first game. So anyway, I posted a video at the time that basically said these kids should be able to benefit from their likeness. Shoot. These kids should be able to benefit from their likeness. That's only American. That's the American way. I think that they're already being compensated and paid to a certain extent by the scholarship that they're given. So that's payment by the school. So I believe that's significant. And for those people out there that don't think it's significant, they probably haven't either gone to college themselves or paid for a college education for their child or for themselves, because it's very significant and very precious. So I think that's the payment from the school. I'm good with that. But this is America. You should be able to benefit on the likeness and memorabilia and so forth and so on, what we're talking about, autographs and such. Now, I'm not saying that's not difficult to govern. It is, but it's un-American that these kids can't benefit in that way. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
How you doing, Mr. Rogers?
I'm good. What's going on, sir?
Yes, my name is Ken. I'm from Louisiana.
Hey, Ken.
Yes, and I wanted to ask you a question. I'm not going to talk about LSU because you already know about that, and you also know we're one of the worst states as it relates to COVID-19 coronavirus. But I had read somewhere and heard somewhere where, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, about Iowa and Kirk Ferentz going to start up their college football program for this season.
Correct.
Right, and so my question is, why are they allowed to do so when so many other colleges cannot do that, and that would put them at a advantage in the Big Ten, I would think.
So a few weeks ago, I addressed this a number of times because people were asking me the same question, and I said at the time, because we were starting to hit that place in certain areas of the country where it looked like things were much safer. But I repeatedly said everyone needs to be in cooperation with each other, and everyone needs to be in the same place in regards to health and safety, because we can't have an inequity of time and ability to prepare for the season. So I didn't think that that was going to happen. I must admit, and I clearly stated on here, we need cooperation. And when people were constantly asking me to project when the season was going to start, I would say, well, we got to understand that based on the developments throughout the country, the levels of progress are all over the place. Therefore, it's going to be difficult to get everyone together because there are hotspot areas like Detroit and New York and New Orleans and so forth. So I thought that was going to be the big sticking point in all this, is to get the entire country at a level of safety to where we could see happen what's happening at the University of Iowa. But they've taken it upon themselves, and nobody is, to my knowledge, is restricting them or reprimanding them from going ahead and practicing or working out. So they do have an advantage. Right. You're right. They do.
Yeah, and and I'm sure you watched the news. I've been watching the news, and you got thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people out there protesting, talking about they want to go back to work and this and that, and it seems to be that the people of America has had enough and are willing to break the rules and regulations as far as distancing and mask and the whole 9 yards. So I think the government is being put under a lot of pressure to let things open up. I think what's going to happen in the next couple of months, that it's going to be everything opened up, I think, because the pressure being put on them, on the government right now.
Well, Ken, I've got my thoughts about that, but I'm going to steer this back to college football because I've given your comment, your question, about 10 more seconds of thought. And let's think of it this way. Do certain schools in certain states have advantages over others? Does LSU packing 100,000 people into the stadium have advantage over Vanderbilt drawing 35,000? And then all the merchandising that comes with LSU selling jerseys and paraphernalia that Vandy sells a minuscule percentage of.
Well, of course they got
they do.
And they're just coming up winning the national title. Of course,
well, regardless of whether they won the national title, those are just two of the schools I picked. You could select Wisconsin versus Illinois, or Ohio State versus Rutgers, or whoever.
Appalachian State, whatever. Yeah,
they all operate on different levels of a playing field in regards to resources and recruiting, footprint, and money, and all those other things. And we don't do anything except for the conferences that distribute the money equally, certain monies equally. We don't do anything to even the playing field. We don't hand Maryland a chunk of money and say, well, your athletic budget's so much less than Ohio State's, we're going to give you a ton of money to balance it out. So maybe some programs and some areas of the country should benefit that they're in a certain place where, we're in good shape. We're safe. We're safe and healthy. Let's practice. Let's go.
Yeah, but my thing is not about the money and everything. My thing is about practicing across the board. If you're going to allow Iowa to do it, then you should allow all the football programs to do it, not just one. And of course, it's governed by the governor of each state. I understand that, but I think that the NCAA should step up and say, no. If LSU can't practice, Iowa can't practice, or whatever. That's just my opinion. I know there's nothing we can do about it because they're going to go train or practice weightlifting, whatever you're going to call it. It's about to take place. But I just think it's not fair for a college to go and train and to prepare when you got a whole bunch of other colleges cannot do that, and who knows when they're going to do it in the not too distant future.
But see, the point I'm making, Ken, is that like money and resources and number of football players in your backyard, those are inequities. This is just another inequity. So we don't even the playing field in these other categories. We don't say, well, there's more good football players in Florida than there are in Iowa, so we're going to ship a bunch of good football players from Florida to Iowa to make it easier for them so that they can compete on an even playing field. So why should we do that with this virus? I'm just playing devil's advocate, because up until just a few minutes ago, I was on your side, but now that I think about this more, maybe we just these areas have disadvantages that we don't do anything about. So in this case, they've got an advantage. So why not let them take advantage of one advantage that they have?
Well, I know you're playing devil. I think there's no real answer to me. If you really look at it, there's no real answer, because folks going to do what they want to do regardless. And but I do hope that we have a college football season. But I don't know. It's up in the air, but I hope we have one. I think if the guys can get, on campus like in June or something like that, I think that's plenty enough time to be prepared for September. But if you go beyond that, it's tough for football players to get this stuff together and all that, and just go out there and look pretty decent, halfway decent in September. So, I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I'd like to thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. You have a great weekend. Here's my man James Warner on the live chat, and I just posted his comment to the screen. James is tremendous. So James is what this channel is all about to a certain extent, because James will blast me. He'll ride me. He'll get on me. He'll call me out when I say something that he disagrees with or he doesn't like one of my viewpoints. But James certainly supports. So this is, James, a perfect example of this. I just say, if you love what we do, we talk college football, we do our very best to provide the best information, insight, analysis here, but I'm not perfect. I'm a man of one, a crew of one, a company of one. And I will do my very best to stay on top of it. But certainly I welcome your challenge in the debate and the discussion, and James does that on a regular basis. And James, I will tell you that you left a comment the other day that I cannot wait to respond to. But we'll do that next Sunday night. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's McD Sport 4. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine, McD. How are you? I'm trying to get the speaker on. I don't know why it's not cooperating. There we go. What's going on today?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I wish things would go back to normal, but everybody does. So I'm kind of in the same boat as everybody. I want to talk about one of the things I saw this week. it seems like a universal. I know some coaches are saying 4 weeks, some coaches are saying 8 weeks. That the college football teams want 6 weeks before the season starts of practice.
Well, they want 6 weeks because they missed spring practice, and now for many of these universities, the off season or the summer individual workouts are going to be compromised as well. But these teams only get 4 weeks in August to prepare for the season on a normal basis.
Mm-hmm. So that puts it in mid-July, I'm assuming. I don't know the exact date, but that puts it as mid-July.
Yep.
As probably the latest to start it.
To start the season on time.
So, I, in my opinion, I think that's probably fair. I mean, I know, just watching other sports, I know NASCAR's coming back this month without fans, which I find interesting. I'm actually happy that's happening. I think, I don't think NBA is going to come back. I know NHL has a plan. We'll see what happens there. I have no clue about Major League Baseball, but I'm already seeing some summit things getting canceled in July and even getting canceled in August, which I personally, I just think that's way too far out to project because this thing might be gone by next week for all we know, but overall,
what's going to be gone next week? This virus just going to drift off into outer space next week?
Well, I mean gone, I mean like the numbers might all of a sudden take a big dip towards zero, and we can resume life back to normal within 30 days, which will be June 3rd. For all we know.
Okay. I love your optimism.
I hope I'm right, but I think with fans in the stands, I think you're probably going to see not all the stadiums be packed 100% capacity. Certain states in general, like my state, Maryland, I guarantee you it's not going to be 100%. With fan capacity, with fans in the stands, it's not going to be 100% allowed. So that's unfortunate. But I'm glad to see some of the states opening up. I am glad to see some of the states opening up. So we'll see what happens. But overall, I just wanted to get your input on the 6 weeks thing, and I thought your lashes are at 10. I hopped on my computer to see that you're doing one now.
Yeah, just needed to move up the time today, unfortunately. So I thank everyone for jumping on the live stream early tonight. We hope to be back at 10 o'clock Eastern next Sunday.
Yeah. No, there's no problem. I was just surprised because I was like, I didn't know you were doing one early this week, but I like it. But just want to call up, give my 2 cents on my stance on this whole. I'm just gonna call it situation at this point. Thanks for taking my call, Mark, and go Terps. We'll win the Big Ten.
Thanks, McD. Appreciate it. Another Big Ten championship prediction out of McD Sports 4 and his beloved Maryland Terps. James wishes the Big Ten would send Maryland and Rutgers back to the ACC. I think that's a sentiment that's shared by many. Clemson alum 98, West Virginia belongs in the current ACC. Their rival was always Pitt, and they have some history with TV, possibly supposed to be BC and Miami and Louisville, of course. All those teams. There is a better way, Clemson alum 98, to take care of that situation, and that's going to be unveiled here in the next few days. So in addition to conference realignment, and again, I think what I need to do hopefully somebody wants to watch this, is basically take my scheduling format and apply it to the season. And so I will lay out a schedule for you. That might be too much work. That would be a lot of work. I can definitely tell you who should be playing whom to make scheduling more equitable. That's our goal. Make it more equitable. Going to let you guys know what other videos are going to be posted here in the next couple weeks. So here are the topics. After we're done with our conference realignment series, had a conversation with Dogs 247 Sports and Gators Breakdown on the Florida-Georgia debate. Who's the team in 2020 in the SEC East and beyond? Great discussion we had the other night with David Waters from Gators Breakdown and Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports. That's going to be released later this week. Georgia, Florida, serious football discussion. Really good one. I have addressed SEC dominance. So I've looked at recruiting, the NFL draft, and then, of course, what happens on the field in between those two periods of time to evaluate SEC dominance. What is the SEC gap above everyone else? Is it decided? Is it close? What is it? What's real? What's imagined? Put it into context. SEC dominance. That video is coming soon. Ohio State, Michigan. If you know anything about the rivalry of Ohio State and Michigan, you know that the rivalry really ascended to the top of college football during the 1970s, Bo and Woody and the 10-year war. Okay, that was the 10-year war. I am going to look at the 15-year bloodbath. The 15-year bloodbath that has been Ohio State winning 15 of 16 matchups with Michigan. And they're also just being a disclaimer on the one loss in 2011 without a full-time head coach. Luke Fickell, interim head coach, losing against Michigan in 2011. So again, Ohio State, Michigan, the 15-year bloodbath, that video is coming as well. And basically comparing and really putting into context what Ohio State dominance has looked like against Michigan in regards to the NFL, recruiting, and again, the results on the field. Not just versus each other, but putting into context how well they have played against the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, the last 15 years. I've got another video coming out. So, entering the 2018 Ohio State-Michigan game, there was much made of Michigan being the favorite, and there was much made of Michigan being the favorite once Ohio State trounced them. But there was a very good reason why Michigan was a 4-point favorite against Ohio State in 2018. I am going to outline that. Okay. This is a topic that I really loved diving into. When they were down, I am looking at all the elite teams across the country and looking at a period of time, most recently and throughout their history, their recent, meaning last 40 to 50 years, history of college football, when particular programs were down. So if you're new to the college football landscape, and I mean new in the last 10 years, you may not realize that Alabama's been down. LSU's been down. Everyone's been down at some point. For the most part. A lot of people have stated on this channel, not necessarily me, but other people that I've had on, everyone's down at some point. Well, are they? Has everyone been down? And when I say down, there are two definitions I'm going to put on being down. First of all, having one bad season is not to me being down. If you're humming along at 11 wins a year, and then all of a sudden you go 7-5, and then you come back and you go 10-2, and then you keep humming along, that you weren't down. You had a down year, but you weren't down. You need to be down for 3 to 4 years, at least. Something in that range. Again, my definition. It's not necessarily the perfect definition, but it's my definition. To truly be down, it needs to last for 3 or 4 years. So that's my first criteria. My second criteria is, what does down mean? If you're an elite program competing for national championships, then to me, being down is not competing for your conference championship, not being a serious down to the final weekend competitor for the conference championship. So LSU, in a sense, is a interesting call because they won national championships in 2003 and 2007. They were still on top of the world entering the 2011 BCS championship game, had the #1 team. Of course, they got obliterated there. They've been recruiting before this 2019 national championship, still recruiting in the top 5 to 10 in the nation, but the results were not there. 3 to 4 losses a year. A lot of 8 and 4s and 9 and 3s out of LSU from 2012 through 2018. That's 7 years of being good, top 15 to 25 good, and having recruiting classes much better than that, but not competing for even the SEC generally. So my definition of being down is not seriously competing for conference championships, and that it has to last, not just a year. So we are going to look at all the major programs and when they were down and what that program looked like before they were down, and then what happened to lift them out of their doldrums. USC during the late 1990s, USC over the last 10 years for the most part. Alabama, 1997 through 07. That's an obvious one. Nick Saban showed up. LSU. If you love college football, but you're locked in the here and now, and even the last 15 years, you might be surprised how bad LSU was, or not really how bad they were, but how not good they were from most of the late 70s to the arrival of Nick Saban in 2000. So that's another one we're working on. Bragging rights. There are 2 particular teams, programs, and fan bases that have quickly become rivals. Who would those 2 be? Would they be this one here? And could it be this one here? We are going to give that a look. Obviously, Clemson has all the bragging rights in that one with a 4-0 advantage there. Somebody just called me. Please call back. I am going to give it a deeper look. Ohio State versus Clemson. Clemson, of course, 4-0. They have knocked out the Buckeyes 4-0. But there's maybe some angles in which Ohio State fans would be able to have bragging rights there. Got our first super chat of the night from Tim Foster. I'll get that to the screen, Tim. Thank you so much for the contribution. I cannot accurately describe what kind of goes through me when I see a super chat come through, or a contribution, as I mentioned off the top, through Venmo or PayPal, as Colton Doyle and Brian Ursam have done. Venmo and PayPal, the links are in the description section of any of the videos, because I think you guys truly either just appreciate what we do, which I appreciate, or you actually get the overall vision. And in about a week, I'm releasing a video here, which many of you will have no interest in, none. But I am releasing a video here in the next week in which I'm going to, the folks on Patreon have already seen the video. I'm going to release it here. It's me just talking about the channel and what I aim to do and what we've done and what I think and all those good things. So thank you so much, Tim, for the contribution. I appreciate it. Again, I can't properly describe my appreciation for you recognizing what we do. What else am I working on? DeAndre loves these videos. I hope DeAndre's listening right now. He loves these kind of videos. He has requested a review of 1983 and who should have won the national championship. Of course, Miami here rose from number 5 all the way up to number 1 on the strength of a 31-30 win in the Orange Bowl. They go from number 5 to number 1, even though 2 teams ranked higher won their bowl games on New Year's Day as well to win the national championship. And of course, that was the beginning of a dynasty. But we're going to tear apart 1983 and let you know not only what happened in 1983 or what could have happened or how it could have been viewed, but also what would that scenario have looked like during the BCS era involving Miami, Nebraska, Auburn, Texas, and Georgia. And also, strangely enough, Illinois. Illinois, yes, I said Illinois. And you may look at the final poll in 1983 and think, why is Illinois a factor? Why is he talking about Illinois? There's a reason. Also, and I remember the season well, and I watched all those games, and I watched all the bowl games, and I remember New Year's night taking in Auburn over Michigan, and then the Miami monumental upset of Nebraska as a 17-point underdog, I believe. I know they led the game by 17. 17-0, then later 31-17 by 14. And it was a great game, of course. But we're looking at 1983 and who should have won the national championship and also how that scenario would have played out in the BCS era, but also during this college football playoff era. Our 2020 under the radar games. So I've delivered my top 10 non-conference games for 2020, but upcoming is going to be my under the radar games. DeAndre's inspired me also to look at 1990 and review that situation. One of the great travesties in the history of college football in regards to who won the national championship and why. 1990. I could do this all day. If people would watch the videos, I could dissect every season in history and would love to do it and actually started to do that. Some of you would have to remind me whether that was last offseason or the offseason before that. I didn't want to discredit national championships. Well, some of them should be discredited, but I didn't want to discredit national championships necessarily, but I just wanted to bring into perspective. Let's take 2018. Okay, not a whole lot of controversy there, but did Ohio State have just as much acclaim for a college football playoff spot as Oklahoma? I believe so. So I'm not saying that Ohio State should have been in the playoff over Oklahoma. I'm just saying they had just as good a season, and by some measurements, a better season, and by some measurements, not as good a season with that one awful loss to Purdue. But just we take the results too literally many times and don't consider that there are a lot of things that transpire each and every season that add up to the wins and losses outside of how well the teams play on the field. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? I got James on the line. Awesome.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hey, what's going on, man?
I'm doing great. You heard me talking about you. Just had to call.
Yes, I just had to call, man, because I love your channel, man, and I'm trying to help your channel grow, man.
Well, I appreciate that, and I certainly I want everyone to know this, not just you, that I'm working hard on this channel and I'm doing different things, and so if I don't respond to all the comments, and I know that I don't come close to it, and I need to do better, but I'm not blowing them off in any sort of way. So I definitely read them and take them in and so forth, and I used to do a better job of responding. Then we got to like 40-some thousand comments for a year, and it was just difficult to keep track of because I want to deliver content. But your last comment, I certainly have things to respond to, but I appreciate, and I take a lot from that. And I was just trying to make an example of you because you will challenge me. You'll point out where you don't think I hit it, where I missed it. And I appreciate all that because that's the spirit of the channel, but you also support me. So it's awesome.
Oh yeah, I'll always support you regardless, because you know, the first time I was on I saw your show, and you know, you just have one of those voices. I mean, you know, it's like some people have voices that's just built for it, you know, like the Brett Musburgers and people like that, and your voice is just built for it, man.
Well, I don't know about tonight. It feels pretty strained, but I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and you know, I wanted to comment on because some guys in the room, they were kind of perturbed, I guess you could say, you know, when I was talking about, you know, why the SEC is so dominant. And what I was trying to explain to them is the SEC is so dominant because of the region that it's in, because you look at geographically, because I've already researched this and I already know most of the African American people in the United States live in the southern, southeastern region. Now, you have some that sprinkled up north in the Midwest and out west, but most of them live in the southeastern region. So that's where the SEC schools benefit from that, because they're in the southeastern region. And because when you look at the conferences, because I look at the conferences when these teams play, I look at Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa State, and, you know, schools in the Big 12, Stanford, those other schools, you know, out west and Vanderbilt, Northwestern. And when you look at the offensive line and defensive line and the skill position players, those are white players. And when you look at the teams that's dominating and winning championships like Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, schools like that, you look across the board now, just as recent as the NFL draft, you only had about 2 white guys drafted in the first round. The rest of them were black players. And where did those players come from? The SEC. You had a few of them that come out of Ohio State, but the majority of them were loaded with LSU, Alabama, and Clemson players from the South. And that's a big reason why the SEC will always dominate. It's just a matter of a school like, say, Clemson and Dabo Swinney. And what Clemson has proved is that if you come in with the right way of going about it, you can put together a program, because you got to understand, Clemson used to be a middle-of-the-pack school for a long time, and Dabo Swinney comes in there, and, man, he has changed that program around. Now, what Dabo Swinney has done, he's messed it up for a lot of coaches, because they're going to look at it like, well, you know what? Look at what this guy did. Look at what he did to Clemson. Look at what he did. I remember when Nick Saban left Michigan State, and he came down to LSU. He said, this is what Nick Saban said. He said, before he went to LSU, he said, he always said, if the right coach comes to that school, they would dominate, because they always have athletes. They have them every single year. They just don't have the proper coaching. And when Nick Saban came to LSU, what did he do? He started winning. He started a tradition of winning, and then Les Miles came behind him and won. And, of course, you look at him now, he just won another championship.
So what I enjoy about what you bring here, James, is that so the issue of race isn't something we should shy away from. It's just what it is, and we're not bad mouthing white people. We're not bad mouthing African Americans in no way. We're just making a point, and you make a very accurate one. So if you look across college football, oh my goodness, I don't even know what the numbers would be, but the balance between white and black is fairly equal. But as you mentioned, more elite players are African American and are moving on to the NFL. But if you take really good teams like Wisconsin and Iowa, they're very good teams. There's a larger proportion of white players on those teams. They're not elite teams, but they're very close because of just their geography of obviously recruiting heavily in their own backyards, where there's a smaller black population. But it's very intriguing, and I don't think there's any reason to shy away from the conversation. That I think a lot of people get a little nervous when we bring race into it, and we're not disrespecting anyone. It's just the facts that for whatever reason that, there are some outstanding white football players. There's no question about that. Christian McCaffrey, J.J. Watt, we could sit here all day. But in volume, there are more and better African-American players. Therefore, they represent the NFL draft. And as you mentioned, in the population of the Deep South, they're more in quantity in that area of the country.
Right, and I was saying that because I get and listen, I'm a Big Ten guy. I love my Buckeyes through and through, and I get knocked on all the time because they say, well, the Big Ten is this, the Big Ten is that, and I never say anything. Of course, the media, the national media, they would never bring out this kind of stuff because it would start a backlash. So they don't bring out these kind of things. But on the flip side of it, you have to accept it for what it is, and this is what it is. Now, as far as Wisconsin, when you mentioned Wisconsin, the reason why Wisconsin is able to continue to succeed is Barry Alvarez brought in a blueprint, and he said, I forget what the guy named, the guy that went to the SEC. He didn't like it in Wisconsin. He left and he went to the SEC, and he failed miserably. Yes. Okay. He didn't like the culture in Wisconsin. And Barry Alvarez said, I quote, this is what he said. He said, this is our blueprint. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. This is what we use. Barry Alvarez started that way back when he was coaching. He came up with a philosophy, and he recruits to that style, and it wins. Because you have to understand, Wisconsin can succeed with that because they have a blueprint and they stick with it. Whereas your Minnesotas, your Iowas, Michigan, even Ohio State, because they've changed over from time to time. Although they won, they have different philosophies that they go by. All the other Big Ten schools have changed philosophies over the years. Wisconsin hasn't changed, and they recruit to that. So they don't have to have five-star players to succeed. They recruit to the blueprint that they use, and it wins. And like you were saying when you said earlier, down years, I can't, sure, you can think of a lot of schools that hadn't had really down years like Ohio State and a few other schools. But if you look at Wisconsin had, they would fall in that category also. Because Wisconsin doesn't have too many down years, and Wisconsin has been successful for a very, very, very long time.
So we had a number of people right around the time that you started to make some comments in the live chat, James, that are pumping up the ACC and putting down the Big Ten. And I am here, now full disclosure here, I grew up an Ohio State fan. Of course, I'm going to be partial to the Big Ten in certain respects, but I hope anybody that watches me here on a regular basis understands that I cut it straight and I just use facts and results on the field to prove my point. And when the ACC went 10-3 in postseason play in 2016 and won a national championship and won the Orange Bowl and had arguably the best record outside of its conference, I said, hey, I still think that the SEC is the best conference, but the ACC this particular season has played as well, if not better, than the SEC. So I will call it like it is. But that's not the case right now. And there's some people, a comment was made about the Big Ten's too slow for the ACC. Well, the Big Ten is a much better conference than the ACC. Right now, I'm not saying that's going to last, But right now, the Big Ten is a better conference than the ACC, and the Big Ten has won considerably more games head-to-head with the ACC the last couple of years. So it's funny when ACC fans will note that the Big Ten's slow, but the Big Ten's winning the games against the ACC. They were 6-1 2 years ago, and they were like something similar to that this past season against the ACC.
Well, a big part of why the ACC looks as weak as it has over the last 2 or 3 years is because of they went down after Jameis Winston left Florida State, and Miami is just falling off the map. And you know, you got to understand, before Clemson started getting to where they are now, Miami was halfway a pretty decent team, and Florida was okay. They weren't bad. They weren't as bad as they are now. And Florida State is terrible, and Miami is terrible, and Clemson is the only school that's toting the torch. So there's nobody else out there. You know, Boston College, NC State, and those schools are who they are. But that's a big reason why the ACC is where it is. And you look at how far Florida State has fallen off. I mean, Florida State has fallen off the map.
Yes, they have. And I think the ACC is in great position because of what you're talking about geographically to get back. It's going to be difficult to challenge the SEC, but to get back to being the second or third best conference in the country. It's right there for them to do it. They've got the players in the region to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mark.
Thanks, James. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If you enjoy what we do, the Super Chat's available. Please like the videos. If you do nothing else, please like the videos. It helps the YouTube algorithm. I don't understand it. It's not been fully explained to me. It doesn't have to. All we need to know, it's kind of like being able to tell time. We just need to be able to tell time. Just hit the like button. We know it helps the channel. A lot of good discussion in the live chat. I apologize that I am well behind it at 7:38. I'm only at 6:37 in the live chat. RC called in, yes. See what else we've got here. I also wanted to point out, and again, Tim, I'd love to get your comment to the screen. Lamar, I see your Super Chat contribution. I will get to that to the screen. Thank you so much, Lamar, who is stating here, maybe Whiskey's blueprint is the issue with the whole Big Ten outside of Ohio State. At the positions of quarterback and wide receiver, only one player has been drafted in the first round in the past 10 years other than Ohio State. Okay, Lamar, hang on. You're telling us. Now, quarterbacks, we know that from, I believe the year was, it was the Kerry Collins year, right? 1995. But let's understand. Okay, let's get back to the original comment here from Lamar. So from 1995, I believe this is correct. Kerry Collins, Penn State, drafted in the first round to the New York Giants. Or, no, he was Carolina Panther first. Kerry Collins, 95, Penn State, until Dwayne Haskins. I think that was the time frame in which there was not a Big Ten quarterback selected in the first round. Now, if that happened over 3 years, 5 years, something like that, I could probably look at the situation and be able to explain it. But over that length of time, that simply speaks to a lack of quarterback play in the Big Ten. For the most part, let's understand something, that we could all sit here. We could sit here for the rest of the night and talk about quarterback busts in the first round. Let's understand during that time frame, the two that come to mind in the Big Ten on the other side of that would be a couple guys by the name of Brady and Breeze. Pretty good. We might be talking about two of the top 5 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL were produced by the Big Ten, not selected in the first round. So certainly NFL scouting is not perfect. So Lamar, I understand your point, and I I agree that there was a void in quarterback play in the Big Ten for the most part, but the conference did produce arguably the two best players at the position at the NFL level for that 20 years. Wide receiver. So what are we saying here? At the positions of quarterback, we took care of that. And wide receiver, only one player has been drafted in the first round in the past 10 years other than Ohio State. So we got to take Ohio State out of the mix. So if you're going to do that, Lamar, you got to take, let's say, Clemson out of the ACC mix. You can't, like if we did that in the SEC, if we said, okay, we're going to take Alabama out of the pipeline and compare and see how the rest of the SEC did, well, there'd be plenty of schools to prop up the SEC in terms of the NFL draft. LSU, Georgia, Florida, etc., Auburn. But in the case of the ACC, so I'm trying to think of who that player would be outside of Ohio State that's been drafted at wide receiver in the past 10 years from the Big Ten. You're telling me only one. One wide receiver from the Big Ten in the last 10 years. So this would be from 2010, other than Ohio State. Braylon Edwards was before. Can somebody look that up for me? Would love to. Who would that be? Penn State. Stephon Diggs? Anyway, we'll give that a look. But Lamar, thank you so much for the contribution. I will post your super chat to the screen. If I fail to post any of the super chats to the screen, it's only because I'm operating on a different platform than the rest of you who see the actual live chat, and sometimes it resets and then I can't go back and grab it. All right. Also have Lamar chiming in with posed the question to query why Ohio State has no rivals in the Big Ten, not compare conferences. Okay. So we talked about this the other day on our Ohio State live stream, and it's an interesting point. So, as you know, Lamar and everyone else, there is no league in the country quite like the ACC, where Clemson is by far and away the best team, the best program. It's not even close. We have no argument. There's nothing to talk about. The second best team in the ACC is who? If I asked 20 of you to name the second best team in the ACC, you'd probably name 6 teams, me included, because I wouldn't even be able to tell you who I truly think is the second best team in the ACC. Who was it last year? It was probably Virginia, but Virginia didn't look that great in losing to Miami and whomever else they lost to. They barely beat Virginia Tech. They lost their other conference game to whomever. I can't remember off the top of my head right this second. But basically, there is no second best team, and it doesn't matter. The second best team and the third and the fourth best teams in the ACC are pretty much the same team. Virginia, Louisville, North Carolina, Miami, they're all in that range. They're all in that 7-5 range, Virginia Tech. And they're all in the 30th best team in the country range. There is that much of a gap in the ACC from arguably the best team program in the country, what appeared to be the second or third best team in the country this past year, to LSU and possibly somebody else, to there are no other teams in the ACC that were top 25 worthy. And even the year before, when Syracuse, they were a paper contender. They didn't belong. They won 10 games, but they didn't win 10 games. They didn't beat anyone of significance. The ACC has a huge monumental issue that only Miami and Florida State and possibly North Carolina. Miami and Florida State would be the best candidates because of the recruiting situation and the tradition and prestige, but North Carolina is doing the best job of trying to make up ground. But there's a huge gap. So my point here, Lamar, is that the Big Ten does have a significant second tier. Yes, there's no question Ohio State is better than the rest of the conference. They've separated themselves and they continue to be separated. They've basically been separated from the rest of the conference for most of 15 years, but certainly under Urban Meyer and now Ryan Day. But at least Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, to a lesser degree, Iowa, are good programs. Michigan and Penn State are top 8 to 12 teams in the country for the last 3 to 5 years. Penn State is going 11-2, 10-3 every year and finishing in the fringe top 10 in the country. Michigan, the same thing. Underachieving, not winning championships, and paying for it with a huge contract to a coach who's not pulling through, yes, but much better than anything in the ACC right now and for the past couple seasons. Wisconsin, much better than anything in the ACC. Even Iowa. Iowa was the 5th best team in the Big Ten, 6th. If you look at just record, Minnesota, you'd have to place them this past season ahead of Iowa, even though they lost the head-to-head. So between Minnesota and Iowa, they were the 5th and 6th best teams. However you place them, you can go either one. 5th or 6th best teams in the Big Ten, and they were both better. There's no real argument. Nobody can defend this on the other side. Those 5th and 6th best teams in the Big Ten, better than the 2nd best team in the ACC. Better than Virginia, Louisville, North Carolina, blah, blah, blah. No question. Look at the results. So you might be right, Lamar, in that the Big Ten has a bit of an issue with Ohio State separating itself. But if the Big Ten has an issue, the ACC has a monumental issue. Why watch the ACC championship game? We saw Wisconsin take a 2-score lead against Ohio State, and before the Buckeyes came back in a very entertaining game. We saw Clemson wipe the field with Virginia. The year before, we saw Pitt couldn't even pass for 10 yards against Clemson. Pitt lost 7 total games, 7 in 2018, and they went to the ACC championship game at 7-5, and then they lost 2 games, 7-17, playing in the conference championship game. So we haven't had a competitive conference championship game for the last 3 ACC title games have been a disaster. 62-17, 42-10, that wasn't even that close, and 38-3. Ohio State is not winning Big Ten championships by those scores, nor are they that separate from the rest of the league, i.e. Penn State. Keep in mind, Ohio State beat Penn State by 11 points. It was the 21-17 game in the fourth quarter, and beat them by 1 point the previous 2 years in games in which Penn State had a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. And the year before that, Penn State beat Ohio State. So there is no equivalence to that in the ACC. Good little fact there from Todd B. I've not verified it, but it certainly seems like it's right on there. Tennessee is 7-40 against Florida, Georgia, and Alabama in the last 15 years. When I was covering the SEC like in the press box on the sideline every Saturday from 1994 to 2000. It's funny because Alabama could not beat Tennessee. Alabama did not beat Tennessee in those years I was covering the SEC. SEC Dog, I did not get a La Tech helmet. I did not do that. I got an Ole Miss helmet. I've got a Tennessee helmet. Oh, I might have missed something here. So I apologize if I don't get your comment. Again, it's readjusted and therefore I've missed some comments. So we're going to talk about SEC dominance. We've got Ohio State, Michigan, the 15-year bloodbath. We've got why Michigan was a favorite against the Buckeyes in 2018. When they were down, that's a video series coming out soon. Bragging rights between Clemson and Ohio State. I think that's where I left off. No, I talked about the replay. The 1983 and 1990 national championship stretch drives and who should have won the national championship in 83 and 90. I enjoy doing those. Nobody seems to like those except for DeAndre. He requests them. So I will continue to do those if people watch them. We're going to hit on SEC supremacy, both from the standpoint of what is the dominance? Is it real? So this is my thought, and I can certainly back this up, and have talked about it in the past, that yes, the SEC won 7 consecutive national championships from 2006 through 2012. I would never in any way say that the SEC was not the best conference in college football. But the groupthink national media would lead you to believe, and the results of the championship game, just that the SEC is the best, shut down the conversation, we're done. They're the best by far. In many of those seasons, they were not the best by far. They just weren't. And I would go season by season, and I would review the results and put it into better context. Then again, be wary of groupthink out there, whether it's sports or whether it's news or anything else. Be wary of groupthink. A lot of people run with headlines. They run with one fact. They don't put things into context. They don't understand the big picture. They don't understand that we can dissect these things from various. Understand that while the SEC was winning 7 consecutive national championships, to its credit, absolutely, and I'm not saying it was not the best conference in college football. It was and is today. It was not by far. It did not. There was not a enormous gap. Keep one thing in mind. We'll start with this. It's much easier to win national championships when you have a team in the national championship game every year. If you are the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, or the Big 12 during that time frame, you did not have a team playing the national championship game every year. During that span that the SEC was winning 7 consecutive national championships, the Big Ten was only represented in a national championship twice. The Pac-12 only once.
To start the call or to decline.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football.
The call
Who's on the line? And we'll keep in mind that the Big 12 only made it to 2 national championship games, 08 and 09. So it's easier to win national championships when you have teams placed in the national championship game, number one. And number two, let's keep in mind in 2011, it's impossible not to win the national championship when you have both participants in the national championship game. All right, it's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's 28 AD.
28 AD 28. Or did I screw that up? Is it AD
Oh,
28? Did I? If I don't have it right in front of me, I screw it up every time.
No, it's good, man. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Good to hear from you.
Good,
How is
good.
everything?
Everything's awesome. Everything's awesome. Other than being trapped in my basement working from home, everything's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such
But
is
happy
life.
to still be working because unfortunately a lot of us
That's right.
aren't doing that right now. So yeah, we're blessed.
Yes.
How's everything with you?
Everything is good. I am blessed as well. Everyone's safe and
Good.
healthy.
Good, good. Mark, just wanted to check with you real quick about, I just heard the tail end of your comment about the teams in national championship games.
Yeah.
The Big 12 actually had, I think, 08, 09,
Mm-hmm.
04,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
2000.
Hey, not to cut you off. I was just looking at the years in which the SEC won 7 consecutive from 06 through 12.
Oh.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just talking
All
about.
right.
We're going to release
Okay.
a few videos looking at SEC dominance, and I was just making the point that I certainly believed it to be the best conference in college football. I do right now, and then even looking back at that time frame, but I never thought it was as decided or as large a gap as other people did.
Sure.
And I was just making the
Sure.
point that you have a better opportunity of winning national championships when your teams are placed in national championship games every year.
Oh, no question. No question. Well, you know what, Mark? It's interesting because you had touched on the groupthink thing. And I think right now, college football, we've got a groupthink. It's always been the SEC, over the last 15 years or so. But now we're starting to say the SEC and the Big Ten and push them out front, and we've completely dismissed the other 3 conferences, which I think is another form of groupthink that's kind of prevalent across the country. But when I look back to 20 years ago, again, in like the Big 12 has put 3 different teams in since we've been playing this game that everybody wants to get to this national championship game. The Big 12 put 3 different schools in there. Oklahoma's been 4 times, Texas has been twice, Nebraska's been once, back in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC's put in 2 different teams, Clemson and Florida State. The Pac-12 has put 2 teams in, Oregon and USC. The SEC has put 6 different teams in. And the Big Ten's put 1 team in. So I'm not sure why the other conferences get dismissed, and we're down to these 2 conferences that everybody says are the kingpins of college football.
So I will make the comment from time to time that they're the power brokers in college football, and that doesn't really speak to the results on the field. It speaks to they have the most money. They drive the best TV ratings, have the most people in the stands. So if you look at the attendance figures of college football, the SEC and the Big Ten always far and away have the best attendance figures. And if you look at the top, pick your number, the top 10 rated games of the season, the top 20, whatever it is, the Big Ten and the SEC will have a lock on it. Your game, your Oklahoma-Texas game may sneak in there. And then other than that, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, maybe and of course there's a viewership thing there.
But that
there's
doesn't,
promotion that goes in with that too.
But that doesn't mean that results always play with that. There have been times that I thought that there were other conferences, for example, better than the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think it's cyclical. Like you said before, it's cyclical, and it's going to change from year to year to year. I think the SEC is on a tremendous run right now, obviously. But I honestly think the other conferences, it just depends on what's going on,
Well, What's funny is I think it's more complex than that, because I do believe in a cyclical element to it, but I also believe that some things never change. And
okay,
the best talent in high school football resides in 3 states, in California, Texas, and Florida. Those 3 states produce 40% of the top 300 players in the nation. It's almost like clockwork, right around 40% all the time. And then the other best states to produce college football players come from Georgia, and per capita, Louisiana, South Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania are good. But the SEC has such an advantage just from a recruiting standpoint. They generally have 5 or 6 schools in the top 10 in the nation in recruiting every year, and usually around 9 to 11 of the top 25. And then on the back end of the career, the collegiate career, we see, as we did this past year, they by far and away have the most players drafted into the NFL for a 14th consecutive year. So I don't know if that's cyclical. And especially since population is moving south and it's moving west, that's going to continue to benefit the SEC.
Yeah, I would say that they've got a definite lead, I would say. It's kind of hard to argue against it. I'm not real big on NFL draft numbers. Like you had touched on one of the videos, just that some people don't really count those. I'm not much on them because to me they're just projections in terms of what people are going to do at the next level.
True.
I'm more into college production myself, what the kids do when they're in school. Like, for instance, I watched Henry Ruggs at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up being the number 1 receiver taken. He had 4 100-yard games in his career. I think one was against the Citadel. One was against Louisiana. Not Louisiana State, Louisiana. One was against Southern Miss. You know, and it's like you got other receivers that are putting up big numbers, but because he ran a 4.3 or 4 sub-4.3, he's the first receiver off the board. So sometimes the NFL, the draft has more to do with potential and what school you're from than it actually has to do with the talent.
True, but let's also understand that his numbers were compromised because of the players that he was playing with. If Henry Ruggs went to TCU or he went to Iowa State or Wisconsin, he would be the number 1 receiver and he'd be getting most of the looks. But he's playing with 3 other NFL receivers, maybe more than that.
But if you're that good, it doesn't stop Jerry Jeudy, though, right?
I know, but they only have so many pass attempts. They only have so many footballs flying through the air.
You know what, though, Tua Tagovailoa throws the ball quite a bit when he's out there. You know, I mean, there's no different than Oklahoma. When, you know, C.D. Lamb's catching 65 balls for 1,100 yards a year. And on the other side of him, Hollywood Brown's catching 70 balls for 1,300 yards. So, I mean, you can have 2 receivers be successful. They had Jerry Jeudy who lit it up. And Devonta Smith lit it up too.
Yeah, and Jalen Waddle. They had 4 guys that had pretty substantial numbers. They had like one guy with ridiculous numbers, then a second guy with, like you say, Devonta Smith, and then 2 other guys with, you know, your 45 catches and 7 or 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle was there, had a decent year. He'll be big time next year, I'm sure, because he's an electric player.
So,
but,
the only point I'll make about the NFL draft is that I understand your point and I respect your point about the NFL draft if we were looking at like one specific draft. Like if people from the SEC were going to just, you know, bow their chest and say, you know, we had 15 first rounders and we had 64 picks and look at us. But it's every year over and over and over and over. And you're right. Some of the NFL draft picks are basically an NFL team seeing where this kid, if he reaches his potential, he's faster, he's stronger, he can jump higher, he can do all these things athletically that this other kid who is a more productive college player can't do. Therefore, we believe in the potential and that we can develop him. But most productive collegiate players, that there is also an aspect of that translates to the NFL. If you look at the best running backs in college football this past year, they pretty much were taken in that order in the NFL draft. You know, the first 5 or 6 NFL draft picks at running back were the guys that were stars in college football.
Sure.
Dobbins and Taylor and Edwards, Hilaire, and Swift.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a complex issue. I'd like to actually have somebody examine it more so, because to me it's almost like the recruiting deal, where you have kids where they come in, and we rank classes when kids come in. This is the number one class in the country because they've got 5 guys in the top 15 in the country, and this, that, and the other. But when those kids check out on the other end, so how many national championships did you get with that?
Oh,
And,
I would love to re-rank
how
the
productive are these
classes.
players?
I
Right?
would love to see the classes re-ranked 5 years later.
Yeah,
that
I
would be
love to see
fascinating.
Because to me, it's the same thing with the NFL draft. There's going to be X amount of players drafted, but how many of those players actually turn into the stars that we thought they were when they were in college?
Yeah, but we're not going to be
So I'd love to-
surprised if we look at the 10 to 15 schools that are most represented in the NFL. That's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be Purdue and Cal and North Carolina State. It's going to be Ohio State and Clemson and Alabama and Oklahoma, etc.
Sure. I just wonder how much of it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. How much of it is what we're telling ourselves, and how much of it actually really is. Are we sort of setting ourselves up by saying, let's draft everybody from this particular school, and when 4 of them hit, well, we drafted 20 of them, but 4 of them hit, so we're loaded. Look how many draft picks we have, and look at our success in the NFL. How much of that is a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Mm-hmm.
Some schools, the pros have great relationships with certain coaches from certain schools. So if Coach A recommends this player, or a scout comes down to talk to you, I got a guy down here, man, he's a beast. You definitely want to get your hands on this kid. Some team's going to draft that guy. But the kid at SMU doesn't have that. His coach doesn't have that same relationship. Like, for instance, Cortland Sutton, who's a kid that played for the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
He was fantastic at SMU. But he didn't get drafted that high. And he's a decent pro player right now. But he didn't get drafted that high because he's not on TV. He's not hyped by ESPN. His face isn't on the cover of everything. He's not playing for, superstar Team U. So he doesn't get drafted. As a matter of fact, there are guys from those teams, those high-level teams, that get drafted at the same position ahead of him, and they're not half the player he is. But because they went to that school and their coach does have a relationship with scouts, boom, you get drafted high.
You really think that has a lot to do with it?
Sure.
What was
because
Cortland
everything's
Sutton drafted? He was probably drafted in the first 4 rounds of the draft, right?
Yeah, I would say he was in the first 4 rounds.
That's a pretty high draft position.
It's high, but it's not on that scale where you're a first or second rounder.
Do you remember who was the number 1 player drafted in the NFL draft? I'm going to miss the year probably by 1. It was like 2017. Just because it's the oddest number 1 selection I can think of in the history or the relative recent history of the NFL draft.
2017?
It was around 27. It was either 16, 17. One of those 2 years. Right around there.
I do not recall.
Eric Fisher, offensive lineman, Central Michigan. He was the
first pick overall?
The first pick overall in the draft out of Central Michigan. So no less was he an offensive lineman, which isn't that uncommon. A lot of tackles are drafted number 1. That happens. But from Central Michigan.
Really?
Yeah, he was the number 1 overall pick.
Who drafted him?
Kansas City.
Yep, Kansas City, 2013. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm losing track of time.
Okay. Yep, 2013. Well, and that's one of those cases where a guy probably wouldn't have showed out at the combine too.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
Sure.
his combine numbers were probably Yeah, his combine numbers were probably absolutely ridiculous. Guy had a 28.5-inch vertical leap, broad jump 9.8, 27 reps on the bench, 6'7" and a quarter, 306 pounds. Had a 4.44 20-yard shuttle, and ran the 40 in 5.05.
Now,
So yeah, he's
now in that particular year, the first 8 selections in the NFL weren't necessarily outside of Oklahoma, who's who of the elite of college football. Central Michigan, Texas A&M, Oregon, Oklahoma, BYU, LSU, North Carolina, West Virginia. Yeah, so it was a smattering. I guess it wasn't quite as down as I thought. Then Alabama had 3 consecutive players come off the board. Houston was represented in the first round. Syracuse, North Carolina.
Sure, and I think there's going to be years where that's the case, where you're going to find more of a smattering of players from different places. But I think on average, like what we saw this year, depending on who's draft eligible, I think that makes a big difference too. You know, some people, the big stars aren't coming out quite yet. But what we've seen the last 2 years, like even this year, I think, 32 picks in the first round. The SEC had 15 of them.
Yes.
You know, I think we're going to see. I don't see where that changes real soon, because I think that's where a lot of the promotion is, and that's what you're going to hear.
So I'm just spitballing it, but I think what you're talking about is probably and this is pretty significant. I'm going to guess it's about a 10 to 20% factor, meaning that if you could take the names off the jerseys, the colors off the uniforms, nobody knew who played for whom, and these NFL coaches and personnel directors just scouted players, that they would just, I think about 80% of their evaluation is, you know, kid A is better than player B, and we don't care where he played, just, you know, we're evaluating the tape and the production, but we're also, as was your first point, they are projecting what they can do with this kid, not just that he ran for 1,500 yards in school, but that he can become this because we see the speed, the burst, the agility, and so forth.
Sure.
But and again, I've got nothing to justify this, but I would think, yeah, maybe 10 to 20% of that evaluation is, yeah, he played at LSU. This other kid we're looking at, he played at Arkansas State. So yeah, we like that LSU, just that he played around those kind of players and played against those kind of players, and he's used to big stadiums and big crowds and big hype, and he probably won't get rattled, and we just believe in the type of football he played. I would think.
So you think that's about 20% of it?
I'm just guessing. I have nothing to base that on. But I think that those guys are trying to stay with evaluation of metrics and evaluation and what they see on tape and all those things. But yeah, it hits the back of their mind of where these kids played. And not even that it's unconscious or subconscious, I should say, because it'll actually be stated when you hear these draft experts. They'll say, yeah, we really like that this kid played at Georgia and he was playing the best competition in the country most weeks, and we like that he was able to do it, versus you'll see these evaluations on these other prospects that played at the FCS level, and they'll say, you know, we really had to put a lot of stock in what he was able to do Senior Bowl week against the Power 5 conference kids, because we couldn't gain a whole lot from his tape because he dominated lesser competition that he's not going to see at the next level.
Sure. Yeah, I think that it may not be a giant factor. I do think that does come into play at times, and maybe not in all cases, but at times. If a kid runs a 4.28 and he's from Canisius, he's not going to get drafted in the first 15 picks. He'll be drafted late, and they'll call him a project and see what they can do with him. But if he goes to a prime school from somewhere, he'll be hyped and he'll get drafted. If his college production be damned. You know, I got 21 balls for 410 yards and 2 touchdowns, and I'm going to get drafted in the first 15 picks of the draft. You know, so because if you go to the right place, you'll get that credit. And like I said, not in all cases, but in some. I even look at a kid like Kyler Murray.
Yep.
Kyler went to OU, and he's done well his rookie year. He had a really nice rookie year, but he's 5'10" and some change, and it probably had more to do with the fact that Cliff Kingsbury, who loves Kyler Murray, had that first pick. Because maybe if Andy Reid has the first pick, he's not taking Kyler Murray, and that's one of those things where there's a relationship between player coach that impacts that kind of thing. If I look at a kid like De'Aaron King, who played at Houston and has a lot of the traits that Murray has, but I don't think he's going to get drafted number 1. Now he's at Miami now, which will help him. But if he wasn't at Miami, a kid had 50 touchdown passes 2 years ago when he played his last full year at Houston, and he's a special player. But I don't think he's going first. He's not going to be the first quarterback taken. You know?
Well, not De'Aaron King at his dimensions. No.
Right. But Kyler Murray can be.
Well, let me put it this way. Yeah. So at his dimensions, without the skill set that you only see once every 10 years. Kyler Murray, Michael Vick,
right,
with that kind of explosiveness.
Sure.
You know, I never really...
The King's not quite Murray.
Yeah, I've seen him play a handful of times. I really haven't taken note of his arm strength either, so I'll be interested to see this year what he looks like throwing the ball downfield to that level.
Yeah, Sure. He's a nice little player.
All right,
okay,
sir.
Mark, well, I just wanted to pop in on you
I appreciate it.
Have a quick chat.
Absolutely.
We'll pop back in another time.
Anytime, man. Have a great weekend.
All right, Mark. You too. Be good.
I keep telling everyone to have a great weekend, but it's Sunday night at like 9 o'clock at night. So we've all lost track of our days and times. No question about that. UCF night. Why does Auburn suck a bowl every time they play in one? They play like they don't want to be there. Well, we could go year by year and see if that's actually true. Under Gus Malzahn, his first year, they played within 7 seconds of a national championship at the BCS championship game at the Rose Bowl in 2013. In 2014, they lost to a really good Wisconsin team in the Outback Bowl. Melvin Gordon ran them ragged, but it was a close game in overtime against Wisconsin. 2015. I believe it was the next year after that Auburn played Memphis in the Birmingham Bowl and beat Memphis. 2015, I'm not remembering. See, when people throw out stuff like that, I just like to kind of verify it. You know, is there a? Oh my goodness! I try to look up things on Wikipedia, and it's just a train wreck. No, that was the next year. It was the Birmingham Bowl, okay, the Outback Bowl. So that was 2014-15. Sugar Bowl 2017. So that, of course, was the loss to UCF. They crushed Purdue in the Music City Bowl in 2018. Then they lost this past Outback Bowl to play the Peach Bowl. The Peach Bowl must have been oh, that's right. They lost to Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl. Yeah, so Gus Malzahn's record in bowl games, you're correct, is not that great. Let's see, he's 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 2-3, 2-4, 2-5, 2-5. So yeah. Although playing well versus winning, sometimes that doesn't add up. I will give them a pass on the national championship game. They played extremely well in that game against one of the better teams we've seen in recent memory, Florida State 2013. Lamar, once again, we appreciate your contribution today. Thank you so much. And unless we get some other calls here, I guess I'm preaching about something at that point, and that was quite a while ago, 7:45. Michael Spaeth. All right, Dale. You guys know that you can suggest anybody at any time to come on the show to talk college football, and we will do that. Michael Spaeth to talk some Michigan football. Okay, we will contact Michael. And again, Tim Foster, thank you so much for the contribution. I think I generally gone down the number of topics that we're going to be hitting in the next couple weeks. Sometime next week, we're running down. We're going to start our series looking at the top 5 at every position in every conference, or as many as I can possibly get to. We're going to start in the Pac-12, top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs, and also going to rank the coaches. This is always a conversation starter. Going to rank the coaches in every conference. That should be a good one. That will get you guys riled up, I'm sure it will. Let me see if I can find any other interesting comments. No, Lamar, thank you. Thank you, sir. Maybe Thomas, thank you so much for your service. 37 years ago, I joined the U.S. Navy Boot Company, San Diego Company 920.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
Hello, it's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate Kingston.
Hey, Nate, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. What's going on tonight?
Just watching your stream as always. Liking the talk what you've been talking about, and I kind of like when you talked about what was that? Sorry. I like when you talk about like Clemson and Ohio State building a rivalry. I actually looked up this, and it's actually a rivalry. Actually, it's like I think it found like in I don't know what it's like later 1900s, and it's a rivalry. I actually kind of was surprised that it was a rivalry, but and here I'll look at Clemson and Ohio State rivalry. So by the way, how have you been doing? How have your family been doing?
Everyone's good. It was a beautiful day today. Everyone's doing just fine. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. It's a rivalry. So it dates back like in I think it's 1929. I think.
1929.
I don't think that's right. I was just guessing, because I'm sure it's right, but I'm just guessing the year. So, although I don't know what year, when it happened, but here we go, 1978. There we go.
Yeah. So Nate, I can save you quite a bit of time. I know all about the 4 times that Clemson and Ohio State have played. So I can recite those.
Yeah.
I can tell you about the games. I can tell you anything you want to know. 1978 Gator Bowl, 17-15 game. Art Schleitzer threw an interception to Charlie Ballman that ended the game. Woody Hayes punched Ballman, and that ended Woody Hayes' career. Danny Ford was an interim coach for Clemson in that game, and they finished, I believe, 10-1-1. And then they played the next time in the 2014 Orange Bowl. Very entertaining game, back and forth, and Clemson won at 40-35. Sammy Watkins had a monster game with like 225 yards receiving in that game. Carlos Hyde had a big game. Game was won on a Stephon Anthony interception of Braxton Miller. Both teams were in the top 10. And then, of course, they played in the college football playoffs in 2016. Clemson won at 31-0. Deshaun Watson at quarterback, great defensive front that won the national championship. And then, of course, this past game that we saw in the playoff this last year. They've played 4 times. Clemson has won all of them. Hello, Nate. Oh, I think Nate left us. All right, folks. Every Sunday night, my aim is 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I appreciate you being flexible and joining us early tonight. I hope to stay as consistent as possible with the 10 p.m. start on Sunday nights. This is my favorite thing to do here. This here, taking phone calls, talking to you directly. And so I would like to do it more than I do now. So don't be surprised if we expand past. I just wanted to commit myself to at least 1 per week. And that would be, yes, again, the call-in show on Sunday night. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV. Who's on the line? I am doing just fine. Give me 1 second here because we don't have you on speaker and I don't know why. There we go. Yeah, what's up?
Not much. Wanted to call in and talk some college football. I guess that's what we do on here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And again, I didn't have you on speaker, so I actually missed your name off the top.
It's Ballard, Sports Media.
Oh,
I've called up a couple times. Yeah.
Ballard,
I'm doing
how you doing?
fine.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, Ballard. What's up? Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Hello, Ballard. Going once.
I'm here. I don't know what was going on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to call up in college football. I was wondering, there's quite a few games on the schedule next year. Georgia, Alabama. Of course, you look at a game when isn't Oregon playing Ohio State week 1? Isn't that a kickoff game? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Hello?
Oh, yeah.
Is our connection not good? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was basically trying to talk some college football about some games on the schedule next year
Sure.
that could have playoff implications. And And I want to get your thoughts on the Oregon-Ohio State game.
Well, it's a difficult place to play, Autzen Stadium on the road. The game will probably be at night, and Oregon's breaking in a new starting quarterback, so that's going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's going to be tough. I think obviously Ohio State would probably be a favorite, but question is, you know, when you look at a line, how much would they be a favorite by? And you know, they have some guys returning. They have a quarterback returning, whereas Justin Herbert is in the draft now in the NFL. So when you look at it like that, I don't even know who Oregon has a quarterback behind Herbert. But since you're an expert, you probably know.
Well, they just got a transfer from Boston College, Anthony Brown, who was pretty successful there. Not a great quarterback, but a capable mobile quarterback. It has yet to be seen whether he's going to be eligible for this season. Tyler Shook was expected to be the starting quarterback, but unfortunately for Oregon, much like a lot of teams that are breaking in new starting quarterbacks with no experience, they didn't get spring practice with him. So that could be a difficult assignment for him, playing an FCS school the first week and then diving right into Ohio State in week 2 with only one game of experience. But he's projected to be the starter again, unless Anthony Brown's eligible and wins the job in fall camp.
Right. And then one game, this is going to be exciting, at least for me. Same week, week 2, Oklahoma hosting in Norman, Tennessee. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, I know where Lincoln Riley has this program, but you look at, I guess you could say Jeremy Pruitt's slowly rising up a little bit with Tennessee, even though he's been there only like 2 years now. But I wanted to get your thoughts. If Tennessee wins that game, what kind of statement do you think that Jeremy Pruitt makes there if they win in Norman somehow?
Well, I'm not quite as sold on statements as a lot of other people are. You know, they could beat Oklahoma and then go 2-6 in the SEC. Jeremy Pruitt's doing an outstanding job on the recruiting trail, but obviously that's not going to impact this season. He's tearing it up for 2021 and did a nice job this past year as well. I think that anytime the SEC gets together with Oklahoma, it's fascinating in that because of the more physical style of play in the SEC, and then taking on what is the premier #1 program in the Big 12, where they're not as physical, and seeing if maybe those SEC athletes can hang in, even if we're talking about what's probably the 7th or 8th best team in the SEC taking on what's probably the best team in the Big 12. I expect Tennessee to go in there and compete. They do need to figure out their quarterback situation because Jared Garantano took a step backwards last year, and he's not necessarily going to be the starter. He's the front runner, but he hasn't won the job.
Right. That makes sense. And then you also got to look at the quarterback situation with Oklahoma. You look at Lincoln Riley, who has worked with Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and then Jalen Hurts, all transfers. And he's got this young freshman guy in Spencer Rattler who looks like a really great talent. I'm interested in seeing, you know, for him, who's a young coach, how he works with a freshman quarterback that doesn't have much college experience. You think he can do it? Or I think he can. But, you know, as I mentioned, 3 straight years with the transfer, and now he's working with the actual quarterback he recruited.
Yeah, so he certainly liked him well enough from a talent standpoint, which everyone did. There was no question about that. The kid was the top-rated quarterback in the nation, or one of the top 2 or 3, but also liked him as a fit for Oklahoma's style of offense.
Yeah, Still a threat too.
So yeah, again, much like the comment made about the Oregon situation, the thing that I believe that's hurting Lincoln Riley, and I'm sure he's not too happy about it, is that he just didn't have all that time that he normally would to develop a quarterback that has no experience.
Right. Yeah, I would agree, and we'll just have to see. And again, you look at, what you're supposed to have in like fall camps and stuff. We don't know what's going to happen with that because of the virus and everything. Which it does seem like that's getting better in certain areas of the country, but who knows what it's going to look like going forward exactly. So you got to think, if he doesn't have a lot of time to work with them, if we do get a season, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep. I'm with you.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for taking my call, and I'll let you get back to the show.
Thanks, Ballard. Appreciate it. Have a good night. All right, folks. Good stuff. Sunday nights right here, normally at 10 o'clock Eastern time to take your calls. And again, next Sunday night, following the full release of the series on the realignment of college football, I am going to answer every question, every comment that comes to the channel in response to the conference realignment videos. And then we're going to talk about it right here. I'll respond to your comments in the live chat. And then, of course, take your calls. I'll take your calls about anything involving college football, but we're going to focus on the conference realignment. All right. Thank you so much for the support. As always, remember that you can go directly to Venmo and PayPal and contribute there. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Keep in mind also that we've got a link there to Amazon. What that is a link to Amazon that delivers to you the exact same shopping experience that you get in just going to Amazon anyway. So you might as well use my link and help us build the channel. Thank you so much for that. And of course, we've got a lot of plans involving Patreon and the Voice of College Football community that we need to get to. For those of you who currently subscribe on Patreon, I hope you watched the video that I posted a few days ago there, and I hope I sufficiently and effectively explained my appreciation. So thank you so much for that. I always never take for granted you folks out there adjusting your schedules to watch what we do here, talking college football each and every day. The Big 12 will be in your inbox, in your YouTube channel listings tomorrow morning. The new Big 12 is part of our series. And again, we're going to conclude that on Wednesday or Thursday. And then we're going to dive right into our Georgia-Florida breakdown of who is going to own the SEC East in 2020 and beyond. And then all these other videos that I talked about just a few minutes ago in regards to our content coming up in the next few weeks. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I'm going to run through the rest of the live chat just in case I missed something. And otherwise, we will see you soon, which means Notre Dame Live tomorrow night at 6. See all you guys next time.